Good evening. I want to welcome everybody to the February 19th, 2018 meeting of the Jersey Village City Council. Madam Secretary, a quorum is established.
Yes.
Very good. We'll move into item B on our agenda this evening. This is the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Our pledge and prayer this evening is by Pastor Steve Cranston of the Champion Forest Baptist Church, Jersey Village. Steve?
Thank you for inviting me to be with you this evening. I just want to make a couple preliminary comments. I asked what the protocol was, and someone probably unwisely said, "You have the floor when you're at the podium." So, Judy, my wife, and I, she's not able to be with me tonight, but we are members at what is now Champion Forest Baptist Church, Jersey Village. We don't actually live in Jersey Village. We live over in the Willowbrook area, right near our previous church, our former church. But we are members here. We do biblical counseling here. Are closely connected with a lot of Jersey Village residents, and so grateful for the work that each of you do in leadership. And if we can ever be of any assistance to you, don't feel hesitant to reach out to us in any way. So let's pray, and then we will have the pledge to the flag. Heavenly Father, thank you for the privilege that we have to live in this great land with all of its darkness spiritually, dangers and difficulties. We believe still it's the greatest country on the face of the earth. And on this President's Day, we thank you for those who have been leaders over many years in this great land on every level, the federal level, the state level, and the local level. Thank you for Jersey Village and the leadership that is serving very capably and faithfully here. Thank you that we have the freedom to express differences in civil ways. Thank you for those that lead us not only in legislature, but in the executive branch, in the judicial branch, again, on every level. And Lord, help us to be faithful in obeying your commands in Scripture, where we're told to pray for those who are in leadership over us. And we know that we'll be better off praying than being critical. Help us to be part of the political process to the extent that we're able to as good citizens of this great land. So tonight we want to pray for all of our leaders from the top level down to the local level. We know that there is important business to be discussed each time that the leadership meets. Thank you for those from the community who faithfully attend, and sometimes to do more than just express disagreement, to express appreciation and again, be involved in the political process. So we commit ourselves and this meeting, those in leadership here and in every level of government, to you. Thank you for the churches that are in Jersey Village and many other churches where people meet to be instructed, to worship and fellowship, to be encouraged to do the work that you've called us to do, those of us who are your children by virtue of faith in Jesus. And so tonight we commit ourselves in this meeting to you. We ask that you would guide in a very special way, and that it would be evident that those who are here are here with the best of intentions. We thank you for all that you have done, that you are doing, and will do, as we ask these things in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. And let's pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I apologize that I'm going to leave now. I left my wife at home with our great-granddaughter, and so I'm going to go home and finish up some obligations there. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Very good. Thank you very much, Steve. We'll now move into citizen comments. Citizens who signed a card and wish to speak to the city council be heard at this time in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Unless the subject matter of the comment is on the agenda, the city staff and city council members are prevented from discussing the subject and may respond only with statements of factual information or existing policy. Citizens are limited to 5 minutes for their comments to city council. All right, first card I have, Marilee Beasley. I actually have 2 cards for Marilee Beasley.
We have recently moved to the Lake of Jersey Village. And we had a big trailer, long trailer, and it was parked in the back of our other house, and we were not aware that that was not legal. We made an assumption that as long as nobody could see it, nobody cared. Well, when we moved to the new house, it turned out that we were contacted by the city, and there was some confusion because the previous owner had a similar looking trailer. And so we went ahead, my husband, because you can't have any kind of trailer in the rear, the side, or the back of the yard, and and it says it has to be parked in the garage. Okay, so if you look at the piece of paper, the first part is the original ordinance. Now, to me, the whole point of all of this is that we want to have a beautiful city. And so as long as, because I noticed there were trailers up and down Lakeview, I noticed shabby-looking furniture in certain places. I just noticed things because suddenly I was going up and down, and it was like, whoa. And I'm not the kind of person that wants to, because it was suggested that I inform the code officer about where these things were, and I said, no, I'm not. And it happened that one of the people that had the trailers I saw over the weekend, and I said, you know, because it's somebody I know, and I said, do you realize you're not allowed to have those trailers out in sight? And so anyway, as a friend, neighbor, whatever, I reported that to him, and we had a wonderful conversation, and personally, I would rather that it be neighbor to neighbor if possible. So, and I mentioned the other issue about some stuff on a front porch that I thought was a little odd. And so he said, I'll talk to the person. So to me, what we're doing is we're reaching out to each other. We're fixing things like that, because it's awkward to go to somebody you barely know and say, there's some icky looking stuff. So anyway, so what I did is I attempted quickly, because I didn't have much time, I'm helping with campaigns, take the original ordinance, change it slightly, and just say that that you could store it. My objective was to suggest being able to store it in a backyard where nobody could see it, like either there's a wooden fence, whatever. So that's what I'm proposing. So that's it. And I unfortunately didn't give them copies, but anyway, that's it. Now, do you want me to stay and do the second one? Okay, on the second one. Okay, well, put your hand up when I'm at 4. Okay, so the second one is all of the political signs have to be removed tonight, because I checked out this information because I'm part of helping with the campaign, and I was told you can't put any signs up until the 20th, the day of early voting, and the other part is you can't have a sign that's larger than 3 by 3 or 9 square feet. It can be no bigger than 9 square feet is what I understood. And Ms. Cody was the one that gave me the information.
Okay, we'll evaluate that, Marilee. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, so they will be gone tonight, right?
I can't confirm that at this point. So this we will evaluate to make sure the signs are in compliance, and any sign that's not in compliance, we'll make sure that the proper action is taking place.
If that's correct, that would mean they're gone. All of them are gone tonight or early in the morning before early voting. Because the way the statute reads, the ordinance reads, or statute, is that you are not allowed to put any signs up until the 20th.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Marilee. Appreciate it. Thank you. I've got no more citizen comments, so we'll move directly into the city manager's report. Austin, please.
Mayor and councilors, the report is before you tonight. The staff is here to answer any questions anyone might have.
Any comments for Austin and staff? Seeing none, we'll move directly into the consent agenda. Does any council member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it onto the regular agenda? Seeing none, looking for a motion on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, moving to our regular agenda. Item 1, consider ordinance number 2018-04, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Jersey Village, Texas, at Chapter 66, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 1, and General Section 66-7 to prohibit certain left turns on Ecuador Street on weekdays between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. and 4:30 p.m., providing for severability, providing for appeal, and providing penalty protection by the Section 1-8 of the Code of Ordinances. Kevin Haggard, Director of Public Works.
Mayor, Council, I'll take this one for Kevin due to his absence. We were approached a while back by the school asking for a no left turn sign in the location described below. We think it's a reasonable request. Therefore, we're wanting to amend the current ordinance to add this sign to make it effective at that location. Again, we reviewed it. City staff looked at it, and we think it's a viable, reasonable request.
The left turn you're talking about, I believe there's a loop in front of Post. Is it the first entrance there when you're going north?
I believe it's the second. The first one is a dead end to a parking lot. The second one goes, yeah, it's a loop. It's a loop. That is correct. The whole driving force behind this is to try to get normalization of traffic flow in that area, and we believe it will do that.
Any other questions for Chief or staff?
Just looking at the statute, and Leah might be the better party to ask about this. Looking at the statute, it says it's proposing adding the clause, with the exception of school buses, it shall be unlawful for the operator of a motor vehicle to make a left turn from Ecuador Street onto the second driveway in front of Post Elementary School at Congo Street. And then it says on a weekday between the hours of such and such. My only concern is going to be from an enforceability standpoint. Is that too vague for enforceability, the second driveway?
It could be better. Sometimes you can use the distance from the corner or some known point so that you describe it east of 500 feet east of the corner of so-and-so. So I would agree with you that would make it, that would tighten up any confusion.
And then my second question would be probably more for Chief Forster. Was there a reason that we're focusing specifically on this second driveway rather than any turn into Post Elementary? It seems like if someone's going to stop and try to make a turn in and back up traffic while waiting for it to clear, that it doesn't matter if they're trying to go in the first, second, wherever, it's going to cause the same problem. So wouldn't it be easier just to say they shall not make a left turn into Post Elementary at all?
You bring up a good point, and we've actually discussed that. Several things keep us from doing that. One is the teacher's parking lot, which is the first entrance in. That would further push more traffic around to the other side. Two is the second entrance in. It's okay if they turn left there. They're just going to be in the line or a queue, if you will. So it's kind of like not a good thing for them anyway. So we did look at that, and we looked at all aspects. And in fact, when we first broached the subject, we had thought about making the entire street one way. But we think at this time, since there's an already existing ordinance, we put up the sign. We'll take a look at it, see if it works. We think it will for the express purposes that are written here. We'll try it and see. If not, we'll come back and probably do exactly what you said.
And I was going to say, as a dad who drops off a daughter in that line whenever we miss the bus, so far it's been a lot better. Everyone's in the same line. It's fair. That particular spot. That's where buses go in and out all the time, and it's on the corner with the high school. It's just a lot easier for everyone just to line up in one straight line going down Congo, rather than, letting someone turn left, letting someone go straight, and it doesn't really always work out when people are in a rush in the morning. So it's more sane. So I like this.
Any other comments or questions? All right, looking for a motion on the ordinance.
We approve ordinance number 2018-04.
A second.
There's been a motion second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Item 2, receive the final financing and project plan for the tax increment reinvestment zone number 2 adopted by the Board of Directors on February 1st, 2018. Lori?
Yes, Mayor, this is a housekeeping item. We need the council to put on the record that they are receiving the report, and in the next item, you'll consider that.
Very good. There's no action to be taken on this item. Let it be noted that council is in receipt of the financing and project plan for the tax increment reinvestment zone, which will actually put us into item 3, consider ordinance number 2018-05, approving the financing plan and project plan for the tax increment reinvestment zone number 2. Austin Blease, City Manager.
Mayor and councilors, on July 17th, 2017, City Council passed Ordinance 2017-26, establishing the TERS and creating a Board of Directors for the TERS. The Board of Directors is charged with preparing, approving, and submitting an adopted financing and project plan for the TERS. On February 1st, 2018, the Board of Directors for the TERS adopted the final financing and project plan for the TERS and presented it to the City Council here tonight for consideration and approval. There are a few changes from the preliminary plan, which was adopted by the Council in July. The first one, the method of relocation statement has been changed after consulting with our attorney. Relocation is only for people, not businesses. Utilities, there are only 4 parcels in the zone that could be residential in nature. They're all located in District Z transition zone, which means they could stay. If people needed to be relocated, we have allocated $2 million for that, and it would be done with accordance to the applicable requirements. The calculation of the TERS values have been modified slightly. Since we have only approximately $18 million of total TERS property values currently in our city limits, that drops the base value of the TERS. So we're proposing these values to be added by annexation in 2019. So that changes our projected annual assessed values and the incremental taxes collected. It increases the total amount by about $11 million. So that has also changed the proposed budget. We've increased or decreased various lines in the budget. On page 11 of the document, I put more into infrastructure for water, streets, sewer, storm sewer. The TOD plan indicates the roads that are proposed in map 4 would be owned by the city. The costs for those would be covered in the TERS budget. As noted on page 10 and 11 of the document, took the preliminary costs and used an inflation factor of 4% to come up with the budget amounts in the preliminary budget. We also added a little bit extra money to those numbers in the new budget. I think the budget's good, but of course you never truly know the cost until a project's engineered and put out for bid. So those are the main changes to the plan. Other changes were small housekeeping items. So this item is for the council to consider and approve the financing plan and project plan for the tax increment reinvestment zone number 2 presented by the Board of Directors.
Any questions for Austin?
Austin, I have one. In your description here, it says we're proposing those values to be added by annexation in 2019. Is there an annexation plan for 2019?
There is no annexation plan right now for 2019. With all of the changes that the state made in annexation, it's slightly more complicated now. Everybody you'd have to get 50% of the landowners to say that they want to be annexed. We plugged the 2019 in for a date because we felt that if something were to happen, that might be a good year for it. The plan is certainly able to be amended and could be changed.
Well, I guess my question is, I don't recall many conversations about annexation and whether or not that was unless I'm missing something, and whether that was an avenue that the city was pursuing. I thought there were a lot of inherent infrastructure costs that we would have to put in place before we could annex. There's a whole cost-benefit analysis of annexation. So am I missing something? Have we had those discussions, or?
Well, the service plan for annexation is implemented after the annexation. So you don't have to put the services that are offered to the other residents that are in the city limits now to the newly annexed territory until you implement your service plan. So, for example, if you were to implement January 1st, 2019, you had a 5-year service plan, then you would have 5 years to actually get the services available to the residents that are newly annexed as of January 1st, 2019.
Okay, and then if you don't provide those services by that date, what is the repercussions?
So basically, you have citizens that are being taxed that are not being provided services. So certainly you could be looking at a taxpayer lawsuit.
I guess my concern with that statement is that we're making the assumption that we're going to annex in 5 years. And I don't know if the city has made that determination. Is that?
I mean, I'm reading this as this is not committing the city to anything. It's a financing plan. So, I mean, what we're looking at is if a developer came around and said, we like your plan, and again, the odds that a developer will see this and not want to make some changes on it is very, very low. This is something that is more of a roadmap of what would happen if this is what we're offering. Right. So I think, it does kind of pop out at you. When I heard that too, it kind of jumped out at me as well. But this doesn't commit us to doing anything at all.
No, and it's sort of the assumption being you have this area that is not currently within your jurisdiction to tax. And so you can't collect any taxes that would go into the pool of money that funds the projects. And so part of your program then is to say, if we bring these areas in, then we have money to implement projects in the area that is now in your ETJ.
My concern is that, it sounds to me as if we're making the assumption that annexation is 5 years down the road, that we will annex, and that process is going to start in 2019. And I want to make sure that that is not the case, that it is certainly a possibility and it's on the horizon, it's something we can certainly look at. But I want to be sure that we're not, as a council, saying, hey, we're doing annexation in 2019, because that's certainly not the case as far as I'm concerned.
Right. No, this doesn't commit us to anything. At some point, we have to factor in all these properties into the TER zone that was created. And so I picked the date of 2019 to factor that in. And a lot of it's going to be dependent upon development as to how that process would actually move forward.
Yeah, I think this brings up a good point, which is I think everything in here is prospective in nature. Right. Meaning we're not saying we will do this. We're saying if everything goes as we foresee it in this plan, that these are additional things that might have to happen. So I would love to have that problem where we have a developer who says, hey, I'm ready to come invest millions of dollars in your community. By the way, we need to be able to develop over here, and we need you to be able to provide services over here. And we say, great, we can pay for that through the TERS. So.
Okay, I just want to be sure that annexation is would be contingent upon development of that property, implementation of financial plan of the TERS. There's a lot of other factors that go into an annexation consideration, and we're not even close to those considerations at this point.
Exactly. So there's another annexation process that would have to take place. There would be notice and public hearing for those annexation processes.
Yeah, and I think it should be also pointed out that goes for everything in the document, including the amount of money that's discussed in here. I know a lot of people have had concerns about, the city is proposing to spend over, $120 million. Well, if no development comes, we spend no money, we do none of the things in here, we're out a little bit of staff time, and that's about it.
And that's $120 million over 30 years.
Correct, over a long period of time that is only paid for using the increase in property taxes that would come about from the investment of this hypothetical investment. So we're not talking about residential property dollars, we're talking about increased investment in the zone paying for all of this hypothetical investment.
Is there any plan to, how often are we going to look at this TERS plan annually, every 2 years or 3 years? How often do you see us looking at it and revising?
I think we need to at least look at it every 2 years. I think as we kind of have the conversations with the developers, that's going to definitely dictate some of the timeline and see what the feedback we get, and definitely take that into consideration as we keep moving forward.
But you will be approving a budget annually. Okay.
Considering that most of your revenues from this TIRZ are going to come in the latter part of its life, and your expenses are going to hit you at the early part. When do you anticipate issuing bonds on this?
When we have a developer that wants to invest millions of dollars into the area, we would have to look at bonds for some of those things, I'm sure.
So you're going to hold off on these infrastructure projects until you get a developer?
We won't do anything in this area until we have a developer on board that wants to develop this area.
Because it's actually a key component, getting a developer in there and actually having the property value increases, which actually generate the revenue for the TERS.
And the properties that are part of our city limits right now, right along Jones Road, those are going to be the first ones that would get developed. The ones outside of there is when we would have to start looking at other infrastructure that we might need.
Yeah, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Austin, I think the plan specifically points out that it may or may not require bonds just depending on the size of the development. If we're only seeing smaller development, the plan specifically points out pay as you go, being an option for financing. So it's possible we may not need any bonds. Now, if we have a massive project on the scale of like a city center, again, happy problem to have. Then we'll talk about bonds because we know we're going to have the infrastructure and the investment to make that worthwhile.
Yeah, the financing plan actually gives several different ways of financing. There's bonds, there's direct reimbursements, private financing, as well as general fund expenditures. Again, this is really use a really good term, prospective blueprint. This kind of gives developers in that area what the city's looking to do, the type of infrastructure improvements we want to do, the methods and the way we may finance it, the way we may reinvest the property tax value increases into the improvement of the property. I think that it gives, and Greg, to your point about the annexation, I look at it as almost as we treat our CIP, where we have projects up there that are 2 to 3 to 4 years out. That may or may not be 2 to 3 to 4 years out, but we need to factor in that annexation at some point because it's going to be a critical piece for us to get the type of revenue that we want to have. It would have to happen at some point, but not necessarily in 2019. Any other comments or questions for Austin or staff? Okay, looking for a motion on the resolution.
I move to approve ordinance number 2018-05, approving the final financing plan and project plan for the tax increment reinvestment zone number 2.
A second.
There's been a motion second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Item 4, consider resolution number 2018-06, extending the current license agreement with Sprintcom Incorporated for an additional 10-year term commencing June 15, 2018, and ending June 14, 2028, in order to allow Sprintcom's antenna equipment to remain at the city's elevated water tower located at 15401.5 Congo Lane. Kevin T. Hagerich or his proxy.
Mayor and councilors, I will take this one for Mr. Haggard in his absence. On June 15th, 1998, council approved an agreement with Sprintcom, Inc. to install 6 antennas on the elevated water tower located at 15401.5 Congo Lane. The June 15, 98 agreement was for a 10-year term with the option for 4 additional 10-year terms. Currently, the city is in its first initial 10-year term, which will expire on June 14th of this year. The city has received a request from Sprintcom, Inc. to extend its current agreement with the city in order for its existing antenna equipment to remain at the elevated water tower located there. There have been no defaults by Sprint and no compensation issues. They've paid all along as they're supposed to. And should the city council approve this resolution, Sprintcom Inc. will be in its second 10-year renewal of the initial contract, with said renewal term to commence on the 15th of this year and end in 2028. We have also looked around a few other cities, and the price that they're paying is within the market range of what other cities are receiving as well.
Any questions for Austin?
So this is a mutual option. They basically let us know they're willing to exercise it, and then we approve.
Correct.
Well, look, it's not really a mutual option, so they have the option to notify us that they want 10 more years, unless there are some issues with their compensation being paid to the city. The city doesn't have a right to deny their request.
So really, it's under these circumstances, based on the facts presented by the city manager, there's not a lot of flexibility to decide whether or not to do this. Out of curiosity, why are we considering it then if we don't have any discretion on this? Is it just a formality?
I think that it's prudent because it's only every 10 years that we understand that whether or not they are paying, and there can be an assessment of that take place, and that you can at least ask questions if you do have questions about whether or not their services are being provided as they should be.
Any other questions? Seeing none, looking for a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 2018-06.
I'll second.
It's been a motion and second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Item 5, consider resolution number 2018-07, receiving the Jersey Meadow Golf Course Clubhouse Assessment Report developed by Ray and Hollington Architects Incorporated for the purpose of determining the feasibility of clubhouse renovations. Jason Alfaro, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Councilors. This is an assessment report for the Jersey Meadows Clubhouse that was provided to the city by Ray Hollington Architects Incorporated. The consultants reviewed the current layout and infrastructure of the building and supplied a final report that details the feasibility of future clubhouse renovations. This item is to receive the report. A discussion item follows the item on the agenda. We recommend council to approve resolution number 2018-07, receiving the Jersey Meadow Golf Course Clubhouse Assessment Report developed by Ray Hollington Architects Incorporated for the purpose of determining the feasibility of clubhouse renovations.
And for clarification, we're just receiving the reports. I think it'd be probably applicable for us if we wanted to go into any detail on this or any other items regarding the golf course clubhouse. Probably take care of that in item 6. Looking for a motion on resolution 2018-07, receiving the clubhouse assessment report.
So move.
I'll second.
There's been a motion and second on resolution number 2018-07. All those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Item 6, discuss and take appropriate action regarding next steps for the Jersey Meadow Golf Course Clubhouse. Jason Alfaro.
Thank you again. An assessment report for the Jersey Meadow Clubhouse was provided to the city by Ray Hollington Architects Incorporated. The consultants reviewed the current layout and infrastructure of the building and supplied a final report that details the feasibility of future clubhouse renovations. The recommended updates and improvements are totaling a cost of $682,500. Staff feels this number is high. The roof project they listed at $60,000, but the council has already authorized roof work for $40,000. Based upon the differences in these costs, staff feels the costs overall are high. We have not proceeded with the roof project yet, as the contractor had some delays, and after receiving this full report, we wanted to have a full discussion with council on it. City staff has contacted architects in the area, and they have suggested a $170 to $190 per square foot cost for a new building that is similar in nature. The above pricing per square foot is equivalent to building a new restaurant. The current building is roughly 6,000 square feet. A new building at the same square footage and at $190 a square foot would cost roughly $1,140,000. According to the Building Journal, the median cost index of a 6,000 square foot restaurant in Houston is about $140 per square foot, or $840,000. Of course, no firm number on construction costs can be given until the building has been designed and bids received for the construction of it. Staff feels we should have a discussion on whether or not the renovations, as proposed by the architect, are the most effective use of funds, or if we should look at a possible new building. The plan is to use hotel occupancy tax or hot funds for the remodel, and that could be used for a new building as well. As of the end of January, we have $739,220 in the fund. We could project by the end of the fiscal year, we should have approximately $780,000 in this fund. And based upon our increased collection rate and historical expenses, we anticipate to net $80,000 to $100,000 each year moving forward. We recommend City Council, one of 3 actions: discuss and take appropriate action regarding next steps for Jersey Meadow Golf Course Clubhouse. And if the council wants to proceed with renovating the building, appropriate action would be directing staff to develop bid specs to put the renovation work out to bid. Or if the City Council would rather look at a new building, appropriate action would be to direct staff to issue an RFQ for design services of a new building.
Any comments for staff?
Yeah, Jason, a decision like this, it it calls for a little bit of information. You know, the first thing that comes to mind is what purpose are you wanting to use the clubhouse for? And is the current design or what we have out there, if we were to renovate it, could it match the needs that you expect?
Right, so we're trying to use the clubhouse as much as possible, trying to get some revenue coming in from there that's not golf related. So using, you know, the clubhouse for weddings and banquets and things like that, even meeting space. In the report that the consultant sent over, in the executive summary, it states in there that we might want to take a look at possibly replacing the entire building just due to the costs and inefficiencies that the current building has.
I think when you read that report, it's not a very glowing report. It's not. There are very few redeeming qualities. In my opinion, you know, there's always a discussion about do we keep the golf course or do we sell the golf course, and what do we do with the golf course and all that. But this is not that discussion. The fact is we own the golf course, and as long as we own and operate the golf course, we have to do our best to operate it in the best manner possible. So that's a whole different discussion. In my opinion, that clubhouse has been out there since, I was looking for a date in report, 60s, mid-60s, early 60s, 68, 69? I'm sorry?
I was going to say sounds about right.
Okay, so, and when you look at the structure itself, the part of the reason you have that AC duct down the middle of that facility is that you have no attic. The roof lines on that facility are very shallow. They're probably 8, 9 foot on the sides. In my opinion, it would be a waste of money to do a renovation project. In my opinion, I think what we need to do is look at a rebuild, value engineer it. I think some of the estimates from this architect and some of the standard industry estimates, in my opinion, are high. I think if we made a concerted effort to value engineer a tear down and rebuild, that we could do it much more economically than the numbers I'm saying. So it would be my suggestion that we look at a tear down and rebuild from the ground up.
Mayor, there is one note for the funding of the project. So with the hotel occupancy tax funds being used, one of the primary purposes has to be to attract tourists and people who are coming from outside of Jersey Village to Jersey Village to stay in hotels and use the facility. And so you want to look at venues such as tournaments, golf tournaments, and that conventions and the, trade shows, those types of activities.
Yeah, I know, talking to the golf pro, Matt Jones, he's mentioned that, you know, a big blockade to them really being able to draw in more tournaments has largely been the clubhouse. You know, the clubhouse really is a major limitation. My thinking on this also is when you get to that point where renovation is pretty close to the cost of replacing, it makes more sense to replace. I think you really then have a structure that's going to last longer. I think you are going to reduce your overall maintenance costs. I think the other key part of that is because we do have the opportunity to use setting, besides the issue of renovate versus rebuild, I do think it's important to point out that because we're talking about hotel occupancy tax dollars, that we are talking about a source of revenue that has a very limited purpose. Like, there are very few things that it can be used for. These are dollars that are largely being paid by people coming in from outside of the city of Jersey Village. We're not talking about residents paying for this for the bulk of this money. But at the same time, we're talking about a facility right now that has had its challenges and has been, at least in the last couple of years, has been subsidized by taxpayer dollars. If we can do this right and have it as a part of this facility that will help it generate much greater revenue and therefore enable it to be self-sufficient, I think not only do the taxpayers not have to foot the majority of the bill for this, But I think they benefit from it, from having a facility now that is no longer a tax burden on residents.
I have a couple of considerations that might be worth thinking about. One is you do the rebuild and you tear down. If you're going to build on the same site, you've got some major logistical issues keeping business going while you're doing that. But on the other hand, if you do a rebuild and we're putting a berm around the golf course, you can raise the grade level. So you couldn't do that with the well, it wouldn't be easy to do it with the current, just a renovation.
So now I know how Ed Emmett feels with the Astrodome. So
We'll turn it into park.
Looking at the clubhouse, when we first started this conversation and this discussion at our last budget meeting, I think council, and this was definitely my opinion as well, that it's not so much a building that we have to maintain simply because we own it and, and that's, settled. It's the fact that I feel as if we have an opportunity with this building, right? I feel as if there's a resurgent interest in a community clubhouse that's a service for the residents. I feel as if a clubhouse, well, this was the wisdom at the time, that a clubhouse renovation would help our golf course revenues, bring some nice attention to the city. We would also feel much more emboldened to go out and market our golf course more as well. I feel like we could also increase our food and beverage options with a new clubhouse. And so the thought process behind a updated clubhouse, I think, was sound then, and I think it's sound now. Of course, now we're looking at numbers. How do we actually accomplish this vision that I feel as if council's all on board with? The way I look at it, there's two ways and not really any middle ground. The one way, and this is our initial plan, was to have a inexpensive rebuild, an inexpensive refurbishment that would make it a better place, a nicer place for golfers in the community. The numbers we're looking at, I feel as if that's going to be very difficult to achieve. I think we budgeted $350,000. From the numbers that we're seeing, I feel as if we are not going to be able to accomplish exactly what we need. And there are some additional structural considerations as well. So with that being said, I feel as if we might be suited well from a rebuild, from a complete tear down and rebuild. To your point, Gary, about logistics, I know, for instance, Kingwood Golf Club, their clubhouse is completely gutted right now, and they're still maintaining their golf operations through a temporary building. So, yes, I think there'll be some disruption at the time, but I think, of course, we could continue going forward with our golf course operations. I struggle with spending that amount of money. I think that it's alleviated a bit by the fact that we're using our hotel tax funds, which is really something that these funds are designed for, and we're not using the general fund. I feel as if that we could build a nice clubhouse without having to use, without using very much city revenue, general fund revenue, that is. I guess the question I'm going with now, is there any, before we really start going forward, are there any other ways that we could look into a refurbishment or restoration that's cost effective? I guess where I'm going with that is I don't think we would serve ourselves putting a Band-Aid on this building. Okay, if we can do a simpler rebuild, that's fine, but I don't want to do a simple rebuild that's a Band-Aid. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any thoughts on, should we investigate maybe a simpler restoration, or we just have the opinion that we really just need to rebuild this building?
My thought is this community is in need of a multi-purpose building. We have the Civic Center, but it's used a lot for court. It's used for city council meetings, for voting. The golf course, a criticism that hits the golf course a lot, and it's founded, is that right now the golf course, for citizens, it's only used for golf. I mean, you don't really go there for dinner. You don't really go there for anything other than going to play golf. And I think there's been a cry in the community for a place for the community to go that accomplishes the goal, the requirements of the funds. It has to attract people from outside the city in, and if anybody went to the scramble for the Super Bowl, I mean, it was packed with people from outside the city. It was hundreds of people that showed up. So I think a golf course in itself accomplishes that. A clubhouse is required for that. But I also think that it needs to be a community asset for someone who doesn't play golf. Like my neighbors don't play golf, but they would probably want to go hit a bucket of balls and drink a beer or something, or turning it into a facility where you could have a business meeting would be great for the community. There's a lot of small business owners in the community. There's lots of people who work for themselves in the community that would love to bring a client there to have a business meeting. Those are the things that I don't think if we did a simple rebuild would accomplish that. I'm sorry, a refurbishment would do that. I don't think it turns this asset from a golf course clubhouse into a multi-purpose facility that also functions as a golf course clubhouse. I think that could really, looking at these pictures, having poked my head up in the ceiling, before, it's not in good condition. So I lean in favor of tear down, rebuild, with the goal of the rebuilt facility being a community asset that is multi-purpose, which I believe would fit the hotel motel tax funds purpose a little more, but also make it a community asset where I don't have to see that as a golf course clubhouse. I can see this as where I want to have my next trades show, where I want to bring my next client for a meeting, where I want to take my family for dinner. If it's more of a community asset where and not so much a golf course clubhouse, I think that's what we need to aim for, and I think that's only can be accomplished with a tear down and rebuild. I did not like the results. I mean, when that came back and I read it, it stung. But if we can just make sure that we do stick with hotel motel tax funds, I'm go.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what Andrew was saying, I think we've seen a real resurgence in the use of the golf course clubhouse, particularly the last year or so, for many other things other than golf. We just had for the kids' Valentine's Day cookie decorating thing. I was there for a completely different purpose earlier, and as people started to come in, I kind of just in my mind envisioned maybe a couple dozen people, and I don't know what the official numbers were, but I struggled to get out of there to close my tab and go home because there were so many people in line waiting to order food, and they were all visiting. I think this does give us an opportunity by rebuilding rather than renovating to really use this spot in a way that we can meet those purposes, because I don't think, the way it's set up now, it really is kind of an awkward space. You could be sitting in one area and not even see somebody that's in a completely different area. Where the pro shop is a very awkward place. I think a rebuild gives us a lot more flexibility. We're not stuck in one particular concept. So I think it's worth it. And I've had a lot of people tell me that they wish we had a community center, like some sort of community center. Well, in a way, we already kind of do, or at least we've been using it as that. I would say when we go to make this motion, I would encourage that we allow the staff a little bit of flexibility to think in ways about this facility that we can maximize the potential use. Because the last thing we want to do is have a space that we're sitting there and only using for one purpose. I think if the more purpose, the more use we can get out of it for many different things, I think that would really provide good value for the investment we're making here.
So I think I'm seeing a consensus from council that we want to explore a tear down and rebuild. It seems like the numbers bear out and the best bang for our buck with doing so. I guess assuming that's the case, I feel like the next line of discussion needs to be giving staff some direction on the next couple steps. My thoughts are possibly we need to start investigating some rebuild options, as well as getting some numbers, getting some pricing together to come back before council. What are you guys looking for from council for some staff direction?
I think the best course of action is going to be have to do with an RFQ for some design professionals that can help us design a golf course clubhouse to what meets the current standards today and what would help us get what the council's expressed here tonight. I think without utilizing some type of design professional, we're going to kind of be flailing. We need some help from a professional in that area to do this right.
Do we need to put some kind of financial limit on this,
On the RFQ or on the actual rebuild itself?
on the rebuild? My feelings are that we got $780,000 in the hot at the end of this fiscal year. Another fiscal year, you're at 860, and you're talking about building it for $840,000. You could just about do the whole thing with using hot money. And my thinking is I would limit it to no more than $100,000 of general fund dollars going into it. So
I think you're going to have to kind of set the parameters of the project. 6,000 square feet is probably not big enough. If you're going to do a tear down and rebuild, you probably need to look at 7,500, 8,000, maybe 9,000. You look at the method of construction. Is it going to be a similar style, metal building with brick facade, or metal building? If you go conventional construction, you're getting way up there. So I think what we probably need to do is set some parameters. And if you're doing a metal building, you're basically, you're not designing a whole lot. It's just a building. Your design is in the interior build out. And I think that goes to us and staff to say, okay, within this facility, we need a 2,000 square foot kitchen, and we need make sure we have a general purpose area, and we need enhanced locker room. I think we probably need to set those parameters, not necessarily give it all to staff.
Dare I make the suggestion of a workshop?
Exactly. I get tired of bringing up workshops.
You were trying to avoid a workshop as best as possible, weren't you?
Yeah, I think that although staff does a fine job in what we ask them to do, they're not necessarily experts in what we ask them to do. They're doing the best they can. So I think we need to provide a lot more direction. And to your suggestion, a workshop.
I agree. It's our job to represent what the citizens bring to us, and I think having a work session where we can solicit from the citizens what they want, and bring that forth to the city to create some sort of action plan would be great. I think metal buildings are the way to go. I have a few clients with metal buildings that are brand new that it's just really about the footprint, and then you worry about the inside, as you go. So I think, and also, of course, the costs are lower. But this is something that we could chat about in a work session, so I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Then my recommendation is for Lori and staff, identify some proposed dates of the next 3 to 4 weeks. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 6:30, something like that, with the scope to be a city council and staff workshop, with the scope to be design criteria for a new Jersey Meadows clubhouse. Well, basically, and what we want to accomplish at this work session is to develop basically the design criteria that we want, probably some basic footprint, some basic amenities, things like that, size, construction, and then basically put together enough of a direction for us to be able to put together an RFQ. I don't think we need a formal motion for that. I think that's pretty much the consensus of council. Is everybody okay with that? So just repeat, we're going to go in, we're going to direct staff to give us a couple of proposed dates for a workshop in the next 3 to 4 weeks, and we'll look at everybody's calendars, and that'll be available for the public as well. Any other comments on this item?
Well, I would like to add that if you're actually thinking about having a facility that is going to provide for a wedding reception, that you come to us with a design that actually shows how that would take place, or how you could do it.
Will do.
Very good. Then we'll move into item 7 on our agenda. Consider resolution number 2018-08, receiving the Gateways and Wayfinding Master Plan is prepared by Clark Condon. Austin Blees, City Manager.
In July 2017, the City Council approved a contract with Clark Condon for a Gateways and Wayfinding Master Plan. This was one of the identified projects in the comprehensive plan. City staff, along with Clark Condon team, met several times during the course of the study. We held a public meeting in December to gather citizen feedback, and last month the preliminary design was presented to the council for selection. Tonight, the full plan is being presented for the council for approval and acceptance. This plan will assist us in planning out the next few years for changing out signage into a uniform plan throughout the city. So this item is to approve the resolution accepting the Gateways and Wayfinding Master Plan.
Any questions for Austin? Right off the bat, I've got a few comments. So looking through the plan, by and large, I was pleased with what the proposal has. One of the things I liked is the fact that we're adding to our gateways. So there are approximately 4 gateways at this time, I think 5, including the Lakes of Jersey Village, and then you've got we basically have 5 signs in the Jersey Village, 1 on Senate, actually 2 on Senate, 1 on the Beltway, 1 at the golf course, and then we have 1 sign pretty much at the municipal center. And that's basically it. This plan, I think, has approximately 9 signs. I mean, if you look at it, and one of the reasons why, and I've written about this, this actual proposal is that when it comes to this signage and wayfinding, we want to basically demonstrate the pride we have in our community, and I like the fact that we've added to the locations that we're going to have new signs at. We've looked at West Road, which we don't have a sign at. I think we looked at Eldridge as well. Actually, some signage on Jones Road, south of Jones Road, saying that they're in the city of Jersey Village. I think those are all really good ideas, and I'm glad to see that. So I like the fact that we're adding to the amount of signage and entrances that we currently have.
And I did just want to say thank you, Austin. I know that during the last meeting regarding this, we talked about trying to tweak the design a little bit to lighten it up and add some stone in there. I'm looking at it, and it looks great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I agree. I think it turned out well. I really like the wayfinding signage. That turned out really, really great. I like the logo. I like the color on it. I think it's a classic, timeless type of look, which has the advantage of, first of all, our neighborhood's kind of a classic neighborhood. The brick fits the character, but also this is something that I don't feel like we'll need to update for a very long time. So, great job.
And just to clarify, even though I've discussed the fact that we have additional gateways, additional monuments, additional wayfinding, again, this is all basically a master plan. However, these specifics would be in next year's budget for approval. The dollar amount, the locations, and everything like that. Any other questions for Austin on staff? If not, looking for a motion on the resolution.
I move to approve Resolution 2018-08, accepting the Gateways and Wayfinding Master Plan as prepared by Clark Condon.
I'll second.
There's been a motion. Second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Item 8, consider resolution number 2018-09, canceling the Monday, March 19, 2018 regular city council meeting and calling a special session city council meeting for an alternate date during the month of March. Austin Blees, City Manager.
Come to the attention of staff that some council members are not able to attend the March 19th, 2018 council meeting due to scheduling conflicts. Accordingly, it's suggested that the city council reschedule the March meeting for an alternative date. In selecting that date, the council should consider that a work session meeting is also going to be needed in order to consider the golf course berm project. Staff suggested that work session be conducted prior to the meeting between 5:30 and 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you, Austin. So my colleagues on council, ready to break out your phones. Excuse me, Gary, break out your physical calendar that you may have with you.
As everyone's looking, I do have one quick question. This may be a little pedantic, but when it comes to the city charter, being pedantic is probably not a bad idea. Leah, is there an issue at all with the fact that we are canceling the regular city council meeting and having a special city council meeting rather than rescheduling the regular city council meeting? Because technically, the charter does say that we have to have at least one regular city council meeting per month.
We're doing both. We're going to have a regular session as well as the standard session.
Okay, it's just the way the proposed motion was worded. It sounded like we were just getting rid of the regular session.
So that was coming up for me, so you're right on it. That is a language in the charter, and so I had spoken to Lori about that a little earlier today, about this is actually rescheduling the regular session because you must have at least one regular meeting per month.
So we'll need to tweak the motion when it happens.
So yeah, we would have a motion in which we set the revised regular session for a certain date and set a special meeting on the same date. Right now, for me, I'm looking at March 26th. Basically, it's the Monday after the 19th. How's everybody look for the 26th? Does anybody else have any other recommendations? Okay, let's go with March 26th. Looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we cancel the regular city council meeting on Monday, March 19th, and reschedule that meeting for March 26th, as well as holding a special session on the same date.
I think, doesn't that actually present the problem we just discussed regarding canceling it?
Not canceled and rescheduled.
I guess it's, okay.
Come on, Bobby.
Yeah, I think he used both terms.
It was a multi-point motion. For clarification, the motion is to cancel the March 19th, 2018 regular city council meeting and reschedule it for March 24th, 2018, and add a special city council meeting to take place before the rescheduled regular city council meeting on the same day,
What I said.
March the 26th.
26th.
Exactly.
We'll just pick a date. Just show up, and hopefully we'll have a council meeting. We'll see what day. There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion, second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Item 9, discuss and take appropriate action regarding transparency matters and posting items to the city's websites. Councilman Bobby Warren.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, as all of you know, we've been discussing the last couple of meetings the efforts by city staff to qualify the city for as many awards under the Texas State Comptroller's Transparency Stars program. The purpose of this program is to recognize cities and other local government entities that go above and beyond the usual legal requirements for posting information on their websites, for providing citizens with information regarding the way tax dollars are being spent and other activities of the city. After speaking with Austin Blease regarding some of the areas in which the city might need to make some changes or may have to look at ways in order to be able to meet some of these requirements, we agreed that it would probably be better, rather than continuing to bring it piecemeal to council, to go ahead and discuss a lot of these different programs at once. I think it'd be more efficient if I turn it over to Austin to sort of explain some of the challenges that they've been facing with this.
So the biggest challenge, as the council is aware, is our current software doesn't easily export things into Excel. That makes it quite a bit difficult. No transparency stars can be awarded until we are able to convert the budget into Excel, which we've spent a little bit of time working on over the last week or so, and we should be able to wrap that up in the next week or so. So the other transparency stars that are out there, the economic development stars awarded for posting an economic development summary that includes a narrative overview, as well as information on tax abatements granted and Chapter 380 agreements. Since the city only has one Chapter 380 agreement going back the last several years, that should be easy enough to obtain. The public pension stars awarded for having posting a summary information from the most recent valuations, as well as a narrative section with explanations. As we're a member of TMRS, all of that information is on their website. It's just going to be a matter of calling all that information together into one website, so that should be fairly easy to do. Contracts and procurement stars awarded for posting a summary, including spending on procurement and contracting activities, publicly posted bidding, contracting opportunities, et cetera. That one's going to be a bit more difficult to try and go back in the last 5 years to pull all of that data. While we can certainly start providing that information moving forward, going backwards will be a little bit more difficult to try and do. But we can do our best to try and do that. So we've already posted all the required information to meet the requirements for the debt obligations transparency star. So if the council wants us to set the goal, or if council sets the goal for staff to achieve all of these stars, which I believe is certainly reasonable, it would just take some time for us to get there and have all that data collected. And we can certainly meet the spirit of the requirements without perhaps providing all the back information in order to receive the stars today. Staff can certainly make this happen. When we get a new financial software, it'll certainly make it a lot easier, and will certainly automate some of these processes for us.
Austin, you talking about finance. I brought this up last time. You talked about, and I saw in one of your updates that you were looking at a newer version of Encode. Is that the direction that you're heading?
Right now, that seems to be the most cost-effective and most reasonable. Having done the webinar with them, they demoed the software before me and Isabel, and we both agree that it looks like it's going to be a much improved software. It's going to be more reasonable cost than totally migrating away from the Encode system.
Yeah, my thought on the transparency issue. As much information as we can get out to the public, I'm fine with. To make a concerted effort and to change systems and processes that eat up staff time in order to achieve a transparency star, I'm really not interested in. In my opinion, it serves no purpose other than to put a medallion on your website saying, we got this star, this transparency. I don't see a financial payoff. I don't see I don't think the public views that as a plus necessarily. Now, in a normal, kind of like the comprehensive plan, in a normal course of business, if we can change our business practices to achieve a transparency goal, then let's do that. But I don't think we should make a concerted effort that costs time, money, and effort in order to do it that we wouldn't ordinarily do. When I looked at the Comptroller website and you look at the people that have participated in the program and have these stars, it's not an extensive list. It may be 60, and I would venture to say there are 3,000 or 4,000 public entities in the state of Texas between school districts, cities, counties, whoever. So, yeah, I think it's important. I think it's something that we should make an effort to do, but not an overly concerted effort. And we shouldn't spend a lot of time, money, or effort to achieve a star. So.
And I agree. If this, and this is something that Austin and I have discussed at length, if this were merely something that we were doing where we were expending all of this effort only to just achieve this recognition, I would agree it probably would have very diminishing returns on the effort. From what I've heard, and Austin can provide more detail on this, my understanding is I think we would probably be looking at replacing the software sooner rather than later anyway. It sounds like we would be able to save quite a bit of staff time, particularly if we get to a point where the TERS begins to take off. If we continue to see economic development, I could foresee a situation where there may be a need for additional staff. This software could potentially help us avoid that need. Where we can begin to streamline our existing processes so that permitting and other things that citizens rely on city government to do can be streamlined and require less staff time. But Austin, if you want to you got to preview the software. Can you give us a sense of ways in which you could get some economies out of that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The financial software, I mean, it's a different topic from what this is, but it's going to help us move into the 21st century. Right now, we can't export anything into Excel. We have data that we can print off in PDFs, and trying to look over historical stuff, it's difficult. So, I mean, the new software that we would be looking to get would help us to do a lot of things online, permits, you could do Parks and Recs, pool passes online. I mean, it really, the new software should just be considered as a cost of doing business. At some point, you have to upgrade your software after the 15 years that you have it. We need something that's built on current technology, not on COBOL, which was back from the early 80s.
Well, I think what's important to distinguish is that it's not a new software platform or software package, it's just an upgrade to our existing. My understanding is that Encode's probably used by 70-80% of the cities in Texas. Right. So for us to venture off into a different platform, manufacturer, whatever the terminology is, I think would be ridiculous. In terms of upgrade, I'm all for the upgrade. So in the normal course of business, if that helps us achieve transparency, the transparency is the byproduct of that upgrade, then more power to us. And if we need that upgrade, then we need to upgrade.
Let me ask you this real quick, Austin. What kind of direction are you looking from council tonight as far as this transparency? And are you looking for us to give, or for some direction on what type of activities you need to engage into? Are you looking for some direction as to whether we want to begin the transparency once we have a software upgrade? What are you looking from council tonight?
I think the motion that we were looking for is just whether or not the council wants to set the goal of obtaining the transparency starts from the state controller, with the understanding that we're not going to achieve that overnight or over the next few weeks or even the next 2 years. But if that's the goal that council wants to set, that's what we're looking for.
So let me ask this, because again, one of the things, and I echo Greg's comments, is I don't want us to dedicate a lot of time and staff resources simply for achieving the gold star, even though it's definitely an admirable goal. If we were to give that motion and give that directive to go and do everything we can to go ahead and achieve that star, would staff have to spend additional time, money, and resources at this point to achieve the star rating?
There would be some. There would be some extra work that we'd have to do, just updating the website and those types of things. I would think a couple of hours would get us everything we need to do for the retirement, the pension portion of it, and the budget portion of it. I think somewhere 8 hours over the next few weeks, we'll be able to obtain the majority of this stuff, and the procurement stuff we'll start filling that in as we go, and we'll try not to make any extra work out of the rest of it. But yeah, I think a lot of it is just going to be the council setting the goal that that's what they want us to achieve, and then we start working towards that goal to achieve it as we move forward.
How about this concern about exporting data to Excel? I mean, do we have to have the ability to export data to Excel to achieve this gold star rating?
We have to do it. There's a way to export it to Excel. It's just not neat and clean. It's going to take a few hours to clean up a report. That's part of the 8 hours that I was estimating there.
And I just want to make one thing clear. Number one, my use of the term new software, I think maybe was just in terms of the fact that it would be such a leap forward. It's the exact same software package. It's probably going to feel new to staff because of the fact that it's radically advanced compared to what they're working with. So no, I absolutely agree with sticking with the same software package. As to the recognition, to me, it's not about the recognition. That's not what this is about. Instead, in my mind, the Texas Comptrollers provided a guide for what they consider to be sort of a gold standard in terms of transparency. It's sort of what I think they're trying to encourage local governments to strive for. And Austin and I have discussed that if there ever comes a point where we simply cannot justify trying to meet the exact technical requirements of the award, that if we're able to meet the sort of standard in spirit to achieve the same result, even if we don't get the recognition, that's what's important. So, I am okay with, in the motion, and I trust Austin to use his discretion to determine at what point that becomes a problem. But I have no problem with, if we are not able to achieve the exact recognition, to strive towards it and get as close as we can within reason, given the costs and the benefits involved.
I'm getting the impression that, you put this in front of us, that you actually see some value in council giving you this direction.
Councilor Warren put this in front of us tonight.
I think I see value in directing staff in this direction, and I have discussed it with Austin. If he had told me at any point that he felt like that this would take an extraordinary amount of staff time and would in any way hinder their ability to be able to provide the services to the city otherwise, I would have stopped. There have been many times I've brought things to Austin And after we talked, I said, no, never mind. We'll go back and rethink it. But I think what's more important is I think that people, the citizens, the taxpayers find it of value because I have noticed in my short time on council that we have a very engaged and active citizenry that ask a lot of questions, a lot of very good questions, a lot of very pertinent questions, and they oftentimes have to do with these issues. If we can make it so that that information is available online and readily available, I think that that's something that would be of value, and I think that's something the citizens would appreciate.
So the way I see it is, if it does just take a few hours over the next couple of weeks, I recommend we go ahead and instruct staff to move forward with the Transparency Stars program. However, if it does become an onerous activity, burdensome activity, if you are finding yourself committing more staff resources and time than you had expected, I think council should be made aware of that, so maybe we can reevaluate. But from what I'm hearing from you tonight, I don't see much of an issue going forward. I think the transparency goal is an admirable goal, and so my recommendation is we move forward with this, assuming the fact that it is a minimal amount of staff time and effort.
I don't necessarily disagree. I kind of have I disagree with the motion. Authorize city manager to take the necessary actions to participate in. I think, I'm not interested in passing a motion, but I'd be more interested in just giving staff direction and saying that if within the normal course of business, you can increase the transparency of the city government within the guidelines of the state. It's just something, but I don't like putting it in the form of a motion.
So let me ask that, and I agree with Greg's sentiments there. Is the consensus of council that we want to go ahead and instruct staff to go ahead and take the necessary actions to participate in this Transparency Stars program, to increase transparency, and of course, and also to provide us feedback if it does become a burden on staff and staff time and resources. Is there kind of just a general consensus from council?
As long as Austin doesn't feel like it in any way substantially affects their ability to move forward, then I'm okay with just moving on with no action.
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with Greg, but I mean, I can see the benefit of having the recognition of the stars. It's like, okay, we've proved that we are transparent. But at the same time, I mean, what I was trying to get at earlier was I want to know that Austin is comfortable with what our expectations are, that you only try to achieve what's reasonable.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got a few hours that we'll have to pull some data, and that's not a big deal. And if things get too crazy, this is not priority one. We've got bigger priorities right now than to get this up on the website, but we're going to have that as a goal and as a project over the next few weeks.
Mayor, just one point of clarification. So I know that the way you're speaking is instruct staff, but the city manager is the CEO of the city. And so in terms of, he reports to you, the staff does not. So I would like to sort of correct that terminology if we can.
It's implied that was to the city manager. All right, so that seems like the consensus of council. Austin, we want to shoot for the stars. All right.
As in everything.
So this evening we have items G, H, I, and J. They're all basically regarding an executive session. However, we have some continuing last-minute ongoing attorneys' discussions. We may not have the information to actually hold an executive session. Attorneys are recommending that we actually remove the executive session from this evening's agenda. Is that still the case, Leah? Yes. Is council okay with that, removing the executive session from this? You guys don't want to have an executive session, you sure? Gary, are you okay with that? Basically, items G, H, I, and J this evening all regard an executive session. However, our attorneys are recommending that we remove it from this evening's agenda because we don't have all the information we need to conduct the executive session. Okay, so we will not proceed with items G, H, I, and J this evening. Therefore, we move into item K, Mayor and Council comments. Councilman Wubenhorst.
I have no comments.
Nothing.
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 Nothing for me. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening. See you again next time. Meeting adjourned.